paper. Our Deputy Leader Angus Robertson and his team of SNP MPs hold Theresa May's right-wing government to account every single week at Prime Minister's questions. That's what's on the ballot paper. We're the party standing up for EU nationals, our friends, we're NHS staff, and their right to stay in Scotland. That's what's on the ballot paper. Derek Mackay and his budget that delivers for Scotland, Shona Robinson and our NHS that we're all proud of, John Swinney championing Scottish education, crime in Scotland at a record low, and so many more achievements by our Scottish Government that benefit communities across Scotland. That's what's on the ballot paper. Delivering record levels of childcare, building more affordable homes than anyone that came before, ridding Scottish councils of their equal pay shame. That's what's on the ballot paper. It's time for a new partnership between communities, councils and the Scottish Government that delivers for the people we were elected to serve. Time is up for the councils across Scotland that would rather play politics with the Scottish Government than working with the Scottish Government. In May, we have the opportunity to not just change the political make-up of our councils, but to change the culture of how we do business. Our councils shouldn't just be a sign above a door or the badge that delivers services. They should be outward-looking. They should be ambitious. They should be positive. They should reflect the hopes and aspirations of the people they serve. Conference. For too long, the Labour Party and the Tories have told communities across Scotland what they cannot do. It's time for us to start showing people in this country what they can do. Conference, I endorse this motion. I ask you to support it also. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. There are no cards in against. Can I ask the speakers to waive their right to sum up? Remove the road, of course. And can I ask Conference, is the resolution passed by acclaim? We turn to Resolution 16 to be proposed by Alan Casey and seconded by Anne McLaughlin. And Alan is the first time speaker at Conference.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends. Conference, the UK Government Green Deal scheme was an initiative by the Department of Energy and Climate Change. As part of the 2011 Energy Act, the initiative aimed at making millions of homes and businesses across the UK more energy efficient. The Green Deal was the largest home improvement programme since World War II. The idea was to install new green technology with little or no upfront costs, creating a new financial framework to enable the provision of fixed improvements to the energy efficiency of households and non-domestic properties, funded by a change on energy bills that avoided the need for consumers to pay a lot of the upfront costs. Unlike a conventional loan, the bill stays with the property where the savings are occurring and not with the original owner. I became aware of issues with the Green Deal last year while working for my local MSP, Ivan McKee. A number of residents in the north of Glasgow approached us and the local MP, Anne McLaughlin, regarding external wall insulation they had fitted to their property. We quickly became aware that people had fallen victim to a number of companies that seemed to have recognised the financial bonanza the lack of the oversight of the Green Deal provided. A 2-day course was all that was required to become an assessor, with assessors relying on software packages to make recommendations rather than having any expert knowledge. There were also issues with con men posing as Green Deal assessors. An elderly woman, Mary, from Bumillet in Glasgow, spent her life savings on the Green Deal to provide a legacy for her family, a better, greener environment and investing for her grandchildren's future. She was doorstepped by unscrupulous Green Deal providers, but trusted the providers as they had been approved by the UK Government. Her provider was a company founded by businessmen who had companies who have repeatedly gone bust and left thousands of people out of pocket. Mary unfortunately found out her home and improvements did not have the required building warrant, and she found out this after her neighbours found themselves in an identical situation, leaving them all in the lurch. Mary had been assured by industry guarantees that they have proven to be worthless. Many of those guarantors associated with this scheme have bluntly refused to acknowledge people's concerns and curtly dismissed the mis-selling of services as buyer beware. Mary is still paying a financial penalty every month. Her energy bills have a surcharge for home improvements that she is unsure actually benefit the environment and certainly don't improve her financial stability. Her home is now uninsurable, unsellable, and for all she knows, unsafe. As you can imagine, she can't sleep at night. Whilst we have successfully worked to ensure some constituents who took financial deals are recompensated, it has become obvious that this is only due to the goodwill of some of these financiers and the clout of the MSPs and MPs raising the issue. The system for the approval of contractors for this type of energy efficiency work was primarily the Green Deal Oversight Body. This is a UK body and the responsibility of Westminster. Whilst the Scottish Government was charged with the responsibility for the rollout of the Green Deal scheme in Scotland, it had no opportunity to influence who the GDORB approved. Exempted energy suppliers from the Consumer Credit Act requirement to gain a credit licence when they collected Green Deal payments, exempted Green Deal providers from the requirement to hold consumer credit licence in respect of Green Deal finance offered to smaller businesses to avoid something segmenting non-domestic market. Frankly, it's been a licence to print money. The Green Deal was criticised by a broad range of groups such as Consumer Focus, Friends of the Earth, the Smith School of Enterprise and Citizens Advice. They were ignored. Consumer Focus has also raised concerns about lack of consumer redress, particularly for those who inherit the Green Deal Conference. This is an issue that will continue to grow. David Cameron vowed to take leadership of the greenest government ever. His legacy has not been a rosy one, but one that quite simply smells of manure. Post-Brexit, he whistled his way off to the bank. His Energy Secretary at the time, Amber Rudd, and the current government take no responsibility for this Eton mess. We call on the UK government to consider how it can compensate householders and strengthen its consumer protection processes. The Conservatives once asked public to vote blue, go green. Scotland firmly rejects the Tories and its failure on climate change, renewable energy and environmental issues. I ask at conference add a failure of consumer protection to these charges, and we continue to hold them to account for every penny they take out of pockets of people and stuff into their own, and fight for people like Mary, whose future has been blighted by their performance and policies. Conference, please support this motion.
Thank you, Alan. And Anne McLaughlin, just before you begin, Jerry Fisher, you've moved the remit back. There is no other card supporting the remit back. Is there a formal seconder for the remit back? Hang on, I don't see one.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were calling
Is there a formal seconder for the remit back? Okay, I've heard it being seconded. So Anne McLaughlin to be followed by Jerry Fisher. And incidentally, Anne, you've ticked first-time speaker. I don't think so. Anyway, welcome, Anne.
Just so I could get up to speak. Conference, can I first of all congratulate Alan Casey on a fine first conference speech and one of the best lines, Eton mess. I like it. I'm going to come on to say something about the work that he has put into this, and I think you'll conclude, as I did very soon after meeting him, that he will be a first-rate representative for his constituents. I'll be proud to have him as a councillor in my constituency. I also can't wait to hand over loads of work, but that's another point. As Alan explained, our constituents have basically been ripped off and we're not having it. Somebody has to do something. And given that the Scottish Government have been extremely helpful already, despite this being a mess of the British Government's making, I'm going to call out the Tory Government on this. They need to get the finger out, they need to review their future practices, and they need to compensate mine and others' constituents. When those salespeople turned up on the doorsteps in Ballornock, my constituents said yes for a variety of reasons. Some wanted to improve their homes. Some, like 80-year-old Mary, who you've just heard about, genuinely really just wanted to improve the environment. But all were reassured by the fact that there were logos and statements on all of the paperwork telling them that these companies were approved by the British Government. As we've heard, all three firms operating in Glasgow North East became insolvent, leaving constituents with unsafe and unsellable homes and leaving them with lots of debt. But that's fine, because they were British Government approved, right? Wrong. It helps them not a jot. But there were insurance-backed guarantees like the one from the Independent Warranty Association who insured Helm. So that's a relief, yeah? No, that can't be right. The IWA, for example, are registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. That has to make a difference. Well, apparently not. I have written to all of these bodies and they are full of fine words about robust processes, but no action. There is much more that we could tell you about this, and there's much more to it, but I can't tell you at the moment. But it's been a supreme Team SNP effort to get to the bottom of this and get justice for our constituents. Ivan McKee MSP has worked with the Scottish Government, and I want to thank Kevin Stewart here because he has been so helpful and he has helped so many of my constituents in a really significant and impactful way. But they can only do so much. I am pursuing the British Government on it. I've tabled a number of questions, I've bobbed up and down, you've seen us doing that, trying to ask the Minister, and when that didn't work, I've submitted a bid for a debate on this. I haven't got it yet, but I'm going to keep going until I do. But myself and Ivan could not have done this without Joe Brady from my team and Alan Casey from his, or Taggart and Miss Marple, as we like to call them. They've left no stone unturned. When the whole story comes out, you will be stunned at some of the twists and turns in this tale. It's so much worse than what I'm telling you. And they've done as we all, as politicians, should be doing. When something is right, do more of it. And when something is wrong, fight tooth and nail to stop it. That's what people want from us. That's why they elected us. So I am issuing a warning to all those companies, unscrupulous individuals, and uncaring politicians involved in this. This is not over. It's not over until our constituents have the homes they deserve and the homes they paid for.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. And Jerry Fisher to move the remit back.
Mr. Convener, Conference, Jerry Fisher, Oban and Lawn Delegate. Members of Conference probably do know, certainly should know, that a motion to remit back essentially says that the motion is fine, that we don't disagree with it, but that it's short. It needs some addition or amendment. And that's the object of my motion today. They may also inquire why I always seem to move remit backs or direct negatives. They should know that I learned many years ago that my chances of putting in a card for which there were another 3 or 4 cards meant a very little chance of speaking. And so I learned that the way you dealt with the matter was to put in a card where you had the only card that was in. Some years ago, I discussed this with the convener, who accepted that I was correct. I find this motion short only in one respect. It talks about reducing housing costs, and I agree with every word of the rest of the motion, and indeed every word of the whole of the motion, and certainly agree with the very fine speech made by the mover that he made. But it's short in one respect. It's short of action that could be taken to reduce heating costs for all of the citizens and the households in this country. It's quite simple. The means of doing it would be simply to eliminate VAT on electricity and gas. I'm glad you agree with that. But I have to tell you that it can't be done. And it can't be done because this government, the United Kingdom government, do not have the power to do so. they cannot reduce the 5% VAT on electricity and gas, which 5%, incidentally, has the effect of doubling the profit made by the electricity and gas companies, because it allows them to claim back all the VAT that they have paid. They can't do it because the European Union has a law which forbids them from doing it.
Jerry, can
I
just make one intervention?
VAT
Jerry,
on
Jerry, I'm going to make one intervention.
They cannot reduce
Jerry,
that.
I'm going to actually let you continue speaking, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. You've gone over your 3 minutes to move the remit back. I don't have time to call other speakers, so I'll now give you your time for summing up, which allows you to continue, but you're now into your summing up, which I'll then give Alan an opportunity to sum up for as well.
I thank you for your
words you'd never thought you'd hear me say. Jerry, stay where you are. Well, was that Jerry waving his right to sum up? Alan, would you like to sum up? You want to wave your right? Well, that means I'll go straight to the vote then, delegates. If you are ready, I'll take the vote for the remit back, and then the vote for the resolution. Those in favour of the remit back, please show. Those against the remit back, please show. Cards down, the remit back falls. Those in favour of the resolution, please show. Cards down, those against the resolution, please show. The resolution is passed unanimously. And now we turn to the Council campaign section. So if Kevin and Susan are ready, please give a warm welcome to your campaign directors, the co-campaign directors for the Council elections, Kevin Stewart and Susan Aitken.
Good afternoon, conference. Can I start off by asking all of the councillors who are standing down at this election to stand up, please? Because I think that the party deserves to give you a very big thank you for the service that you have given to your communities. And now I'm about to pick on one of you. Who is it going to be? Well, we're in the great city of Aberdeen, and I had the great pleasure of being elected to the City Council here in 1999 with a formidable woman who is standing down at this election. She has been a party member for 60 years. 60 years. And has given 18 years of service on Aberdeen City Council. She was first elected to a ward called Donmouth in the old single-member wards. And the opposition parties thought it would be quite funny to call her the Donmouth, because she was a bit vociferous. And she took that as a huge badge of honour, as that showed that she was sticking up for her constituents as she's seen. So could I ask Bailey Muriel Jaffrey to stand up? And can I ask you, conference, to show your appreciation for somebody that's been a member for 60 years? Where are you, Muriel? She's some woman, and she's probably going to kill me for that, but there we go. Conference, the council elections on May the 4th are about local communities and local services. Investing in communities, protecting the most vulnerable in society, and delivering the best possible public services. These will be the priorities of your SNP candidates. We're increasing funding for local services by £400 million this year. Funding which will deliver our key priorities locally, such as closing the attainment gap and expanding childcare. Every vote for the SNP will be a vote to protect vital services that we all depend on. Every one of our candidates are dedicated local campaigners and believe passionately in protecting local services from Tory cuts.
Conference, here are just a few of the things that SNP councils and SNP councillors will deliver for communities across Scotland. An expansion in free childcare for 3- and 4-year-olds and vulnerable 2-year-olds, 30 hours a week, giving our children and young people the very best start in life. Investing directly in our schools to close the attainment gap. Free school meals for every child in primary 1 to 3, and for children in early education, free lunches for them too. An ambitious target to build 50,000 new affordable homes across Scotland by 2021, 35,000 of those for social rent. 100,000 small businesses, the lifeblood of local economies, supported by our small business bonus and taken out of rates, having to pay rates altogether. Investing in integrated health and social care, providing services, vital services that vulnerable people rely on when and where they need them to deliver the most effective outcomes for people and communities. Supporting active travel across Scotland, creating healthier communities by making it easier and more inclusive and more accessible for people to cycle and walk to work, to school and to leisure. And, as we've heard about already this afternoon, putting power back into the hands of local communities, giving them decisions and resources to make the changes that they need and deliver the solutions that they want for their own neighbourhoods.
And now it's time to meet some of the candidates. Can I ask Councillor Jackie Dunbar from Aberdeen City to come to the podium, please? Now, Jackie, I know that you were first elected in 2007, and since then, you've had a great interest in housing. Can you tell us what you think that we need to be doing in the city of Aberdeen in terms of housing, please?
Yeah, well, as you know, Kevin, when we were in power in Aberdeen, one of the very first things that we did was to start the process of building the first council housing in the city for over 30 years. Thank you. Then Labour came into power and everything just ground to an absolute halt. They have failed to bring forward any new substantial proposals to continue the work that we started. When we regain the power after the 4th of May, we will do everything to ensure that Aberdeen benefits from the Scottish Government's ambitious £3 billion housing investment.
Thank you. And first-time candidate Katrina Mackenzie, also from Aberdeen. Katrina, you've heard what Jackie has had to say there. Can you tell us what you intend to do as a new councillor after your election on the 4th of May?
Yeah, the need for warm, secure, affordable housing, it's really plain to see in Tory and Ferryhill, the communities I would like to work and represent for the City Council. And in the years that I've been working in the area already, I've seen firsthand the dire conditions that people's lives are in under a Labour and Tory administration, and neither of those parties are standing enough candidates for an administration. So they're clearly hoping to renew this 5-year despicable double act that we've all had to put up with. And as Jackie said, it's the SNP who came in with a plan of action. We'll do that again now, because we'll be putting people first, and we want to keep the petty political arguments and politics of the Labour and Tory parties out of our townhouse and out of our city.
Conference, I'd like to introduce Councillor Marie Burns, a fellow woman leading an SNP group. She leads the SNP group in North Ayrshire, and I believe will be the next leader of North Ayrshire Council.
Yes.
Marie, could you tell us some of your ideas and some of what SNP councils can do to drive forward inclusive economic growth at local level?
Thank you. Conference, economic development's probably not the first thing to spring to mind when we think of services delivered by local government, but a strong economy is vital to local communities because it means jobs, it means financial stability, it means thriving local businesses and services. It gives hope to communities, lifts people out of poverty and improves general health and well-being. As an incoming SNP administration in North Ayrshire in 2012, we created a new council department of economy and communities. The reason we did that was because if you want genuine inclusive growth, then those two things are equally important. We built a new team of business advisors and set them to work alongside a team of people working with and supporting local communities. Together with partners like Scottish Enterprise and Skills Development Scotland, we created Team North Ayrshire, which is a single point of contact providing a range of services to local businesses tailored to their needs. Supporting and growing local businesses, tackling the demand side of the economy is critical to ensuring that jobs and wealth are created. But what's equally important is ensuring that local communities can access those jobs and share in that wealth. That's why, if re-elected, we are committed to developing community hubs with many of the same partners to provide a single point of contact and a range of services and support with many of the same partners to local people. We have been working directly with the Scottish Government to make inclusive growth real by looking at barriers to employment in one of our most deprived areas in North Ayrshire. And in doing that, we are showing how an SNP local government and an SNP national government in Holyrood can work together to help local people address those barriers. What's important about this work is that it's driven for and by the community. Building the resilience of local communities, building the kind of country we want to live in from the ground up is what local government is all about. And quite honestly, that's what's so exciting about being part of all of it. If local government is about anything, it's about the voice of the people. Now, we've got a great bunch of candidates in North Ayrshire. I have to tell you that they're not gender balanced. There are more women than men. And we will also have 3 EU nationals standing as candidates. And so my message to all those North Ayrshire candidates and to all the rest of you is get out there, get working, and let's give the people a voice.
Right. And now I've got great pleasure in introducing my friend, an inspirational man, Dennis Robertson, who will be standing in Stonehaven in Aberdeenshire.
Hi, Kevin. Conference. I've been called many a thing by Kevin, but that's the nicest, I know. Conference, I want to take my knowledge and my experience of being an MSP to local council. I want to take my knowledge and experience of being in social work to local council. I want to take my experience of being a disabled person to local council. I want to take my experience of listening to people to local council. The Minister said earlier, that is Kevin Stewart, about community empowerment. And that's what we need to do. We need to get out there. We need to empower people, give them that courage to come forward and to participate, as Kevin was saying. But we need to do our bit. And our bit is to put our trust in our councillors to do the right thing for the people of Scotland. Conference, it's about time we were out there knocking doors. Thank you.
Well done, Manny. Right.
And Conference, I'm delighted to introduce a double act from the great city of Glasgow. First of all, a first-time candidate and a true Glasgow girl, Rosa Sally.
It's an honour to speak alongside Susan, David, Kevin and all other councillors, candidates. I joined this party because I know that to be Scottish, you only need to live in Scotland. We are an inclusive party that welcomes all backgrounds, no matter where you come from, no matter of your color, or your sexuality, or your religion. You are welcomed here. And I know that, and I've learned that from experience. This morning, we saw our diverse candidates standing from 4 local governments, and we can see how diverse our party is. And our party values diversity and equality. Our task is always to ensure that no one's voice is forgotten. That's our first task. To encourage others to join us and hold each other's hands into giving power to the voiceless. And that starts with firstly, to ensure we give Glasgow back to the people. Why? Because people make Glasgow. I'm standing as a candidate for Garscaden and Scotstoun Hill. My experience in campaigning as a Glasgow girl and as a proud trade unionist has taught me that many people need our help now. And we are here to hold their hands and to give them a hand and to serve our community. Working in an MP's office has also taught me that we need a change in Glasgow City Council. We really need it. I see people coming to our office that Glasgow City Council is not really working for them. It needs a reformation. We will reform the way Glasgow City Council is operating so that we work for the people and not the other way around. One of our initiatives is to support refugees, which is something that I'm very passionate about, and I have spoken with Susan about it. This is just one. We will create a committee that ensures that they are not subject to destitution. They have access to good housing and education. As anybody else is, we are all equal. Conference, I love Glasgow. And I love Scotland. It's my home. If I'm elected as a councillor, I will put my heart and soul and use all my passion to serve my community. And I trust I will do that for you. If I'm elected, we will make history. We will win back Glasgow. And Glaswegians will make sure that they can be the best they can be. Thank you.
And finally, conference, my friend and colleague, and a man who is more passionate about empowering communities than anyone else that I know, the next deputy leader of Glasgow City Council, Councillor David MacDonald.
Thank you, boss. Conference, I'm proud to be one of the 56 candidates that the SNP will be standing in Glasgow, and I'm proud that we have some amazing Glasgow girls like Rosa and Susan leading that campaign. When it comes to community empowerment, we have an amazing story to tell as a party. Over the last 10 years, our Scottish Government have worked tirelessly to strengthen the voices of Scotland's communities. They've done that through bold land reform, through an ambitious programme of community ownership and asset transfer, through record funding for fragile and deprived neighbourhoods, and they've passed the Community Empowerment Act, something that we should all take great pride in. All of that has given our citizens, our communities and our councils the tools that they need to address local concerns and to deliver on local priorities. And in Glasgow, we are grasping that opportunity. We've announced a series of major community empowerment policies to strengthen our local democracy, the most significant of which is meeting the Scottish Government's ambition for local councils to spend 1% of their budgets through community budgeting or participatory budgeting. In Glasgow, that will deliver a minimum of £1 million to every community in our city. More than £20 million being taken from the dark and dusty corridors of the city chambers where decisions are made behind closed doors to be made in communities. We'll work with our communities to ensure that they have the advice and the resources they need and the capacity to make the most of these exciting opportunities. It will be the biggest transfer of power over the issues, the finances, the places, and the issues in communities, to communities, and by communities. If we can achieve that in Glasgow and in councils across Scotland, then we will have achieved a revolution of local empowerment. And what are we not, conference, if we are not still revolutionary in this party? At these elections, SNP council groups must be up for a revolution. We must be more responsive to local needs. We must be local champions and local facilitators to decentralise power back to the people that we serve. And we must ensure that every policy that we promote is one that builds stronger communities with greater opportunities for all. So let's make sure over the next 50 or so days that we tell everyone that a vote at these elections for the SNP is a vote for strengthened communities in a stronger country. Thank you very much.
So, you've met 6 wonderful candidates here just now. You've heard many other candidates speak during the course of this conference. Could I ask all of those that are standing in the forthcoming local elections to please stand? These talented people are going to serve communities across Scotland and serve them well. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. But in order for them to win, what do we need to do, Susan?
We need to get out and campaign, Conference. We need to get out and knock doors. We need to take our message of supporting local communities, delivering better services, transforming neighbourhoods. We need to take that message to every doorstep that we can across the next few weeks. If we don't do that, then all of these fantastic candidates of an extraordinary calibre may not have the opportunity to make the transformations that our communities so desperately need. So we need every single SNP activist, all of you here today and all of you listening at home, to get out, support your local SNP candidates and turn councils across Scotland into SNP councils, fighting for local communities, fighting for people across this country. Get out and work for it, and we can deliver this.
One final point, Conference. I'm sure, like me, you want to see all of these fine folk elected, that you want to see Susan lead Glasgow City Council. But also in terms of creating the partnership that we need to deliver across Scotland, it would be much better for us in government if we had strong SNP teams in every single council. Please do all that you can to make sure that these people are elected on the 4th of May. And I'll finish with a phrase that everybody here in Aberdeen is always sick fed up with me saying, and that's chap as many doors as you can.
Thank you, Conference. You were wonderful. Very incredible.
In conference, just for those candidates watching at home, either on broadcast or through our own channels, let's give a warm round of applause to all those standing for the SNP in the forthcoming council elections. Thank you for doing that, and good luck to you all. We now turn to topical and emergency resolutions. So topical resolution 3, and the resolutions have been up on the screens. There's the East Africa food crisis, and that will be proposed by Patrick Grady MP and seconded by Kate Forbes MSP. Please welcome Patrick Grady.
Thank you, Conference. There's a provision in our standing orders not just for topical but for emergency resolutions. And I nearly asked SOAC to consider this as an emergency resolution because the food crisis in East Africa is the biggest and most immediate humanitarian emergency in the world today. 16 million people across Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia and South Sudan are at imminent risk of death from a severe and acute malnutrition. A state of famine has already been declared in South Sudan, the first declaration of famine anywhere in the world for more than 6 years. So the first thing that this resolution does is welcome the response from the Scottish Government, a donation announced by the First Minister of £200,000 to the Disasters Emergency Committee appeal. That appeal has already made over £17 million in just 4 days, and all the information about how to donate to it can be found readily online. And we should also welcome the support provided by the UK Department for International Development. All of these donations will provide immediate food, water and medical treatment for the women, men and children affected. But we also have to ask why, in this world of plenty, we are still facing famine situations. The reality is that this food crisis was entirely avoidable. Conflict across the region has displaced communities and prevented food supplies from getting where they're needed. And when drought and unpredictable weather compounds the problem, we must remember that climate change is very much the responsibility and the result of polluting behaviour by us here in the West. And that's why we should also welcome the Scottish Government's lead in tackling climate change and resolve to do more. We must hold the UK Government to account for military adventurism and its unwillingness to speak out against oppressive regimes. And we must resolve that an independent Scotland will live up to those principles in our party's constitution of furthering international cooperation, world peace, and the protection of the environment. The Scottish Government is committed to meeting its manifesto pledge to establish a £1 million humanitarian aid fund, and its new international development strategy is based on a partnership approach, which is very different from the contractual and unilateralist approach increasingly being taken by the UK Department for International Development. Conference, we must respond with urgency and compassion to the cry of our poorest brothers and sisters literally starving to death in East Africa. Even in the face of all the other challenges of the world today, this crisis must not be forgotten or allowed to get worse. The emergency is caused by the actions of people and government, and so it stands to reason that people and government must be able to overcome it. Let's agree that our priorities, whether here, at home, or abroad, will always be to put the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable first, and bring about a world where poverty, in all its forms, really is history. Please support the resolution.
And Kate Forbes, MSP, to second the resolution.
Thank you. Conference, as we sit here this afternoon, more than 800,000 wee ones under the age of 5 years old are severely malnourished in East Africa, and without immediate treatment, they are at risk of starving to death. Patrick mentioned that there are 16 million people at risk of hunger. 16 million people is a very big number, but that's 16 million lives with 16 million faces. They're the mums who are walking 9 kilometres in search of water for their children, or the families in Somaliland who've lost all their livestock, that's their savings, and that's guaranteed food. Or there are the families in South Sudan who've already lived through a brutal war, who fled for their lives and now have nothing to eat. Or the children in Ethiopia, whose pleas for food have dwindled in their weakness. Conference, we may never meet them. We probably will not ever meet them. But each of those lives are very important, and we have a moral duty to care and a moral duty to act. Like you, I passionately believe in community, and none more so than the global community. That's the community that we want to join as an independent nation. And our attitude to international development should never be born of an imperialistic or a paternalistic attitude or a view of our self-importance. No, it should be born of a sense of common humanity, that the mum and the dad and the wee girl and the wee boy could be you and it could be me. And so we must work to strengthen economies and societies across the world so that these crises are averted. The challenge is enormous, but let's pass this motion to show the world that we care and that we will act. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. With no cards in against, can I ask Conference, is the resolution passed by acclaim? It is. Thank you very much. And topical resolution 4, unaccompanied refugee children, shall be proposed by Angela Constance, MSP. And Christina McKelvey, please stand by. Angela Constance.
Thank you, Derek. Conference, Jackie Kay, the Scots macker, said at the opening of the Scottish Parliament last year that it takes more than one language to tell a story. And it certainly takes more than one language to tell Scotland's story. Because we have opened our doors and we've opened our hearts and we've said Scotland welcomes refugees. Over the past 18 months, 1,400 Syrian refugees have come to Scotland. And I'm always struck and humbled by their strength, their dignity, and their resilience. And I'm always truly inspired by their utter determination to rebuild their lives and to make a contribution to their new home, to their new country. And while we welcome refugees from all over the world, we have to remember what brought them here. Refugees are people who have been forced to leave their homes to escape war and persecution. And whether that was war in Syria or persecution elsewhere, refugees have lived through trauma, loss, and upheaval that most of us would struggle to imagine. And tragically, children are not exempt from the horrors of war. Around half of the Syrian refugees arriving in Scotland have been children. And despite the terrible things that they have faced, these children have now reached a place of safety with their families. But right now, across Europe, there are 96,000 lone child refugees. Without the comfort or the safety of their own family, they're incredibly vulnerable. They're at serious risk of trafficking, exploitation, or other horrors. Indeed, according to Europol, 10,000 unaccompanied children have gone missing. So where are they? God only knows. And contrary to what you read in some papers, teenage boys are as at much risk too. And given that 2015 seen the biggest movement of people since World War II, given that 2016 seen 20,000 unaccompanied children reach Italy by the hazards of sea, and another 5,000 reach the shores of Greece, given that there were children in Calais aged between 8 and 18 years, we very much welcomed the amendment by Lord Dubs to the 2016 Immigration Act. And his amendment, the Dubs Amendment, opened up a new lifeline for lone child refugees in Europe, creating a safe and a legal route for children who had lost their homes, for children who had lost their families, enabling them to reach a place of safety in the UK, a commitment to protect children close to our shores. So imagine the utter dismay, the hurt and the anger when just over a month ago, the UK government announced a shameful U-turn and that only 350 children will be brought to the UK, effectively capping and scrapping the Dubs Amendment. So let's be clear, abandoning the Dubs Amendment is tantamount to abandoning children. The Tories are turning their backs on children in their hour of greatest need and danger. It is shameful beyond description. Conference, nations are measured by their humanity. We will be measured by the humanity and compassion that we display. And I want to be part of a country that's outward-looking and that is compassionate. I don't want to be part of a country that turns its back on Waynes in their hour of need. So let us say, conference, not in our name. Conference, the plight of unaccompanied children demands a bold and a humane response, and we call on the UK government to reverse this utterly shameful decision. I have spoken to Lord Dubs and I've told him that Scotland stands ready to do more. We will not stand by and see these children turned away. Theresa may turn her back on these children. Well, we'll open our arms and say that these are our bairns, and we will say, welcome, welcome to Scotland. And to those refugee children who are already in Scotland, and to the refugee children who I hope and pray will make their way to Scotland, I say, you too are the sons and daughters of Scotland. You are ours as we are yours. You are our bairns. Thank you. Support the motion.
Conference, I'll take Christina McKelvey's as a formal seconder. I'm now out of time. I apologise to other speakers. There were no cards in against, but can I ask, is this resolution passed by acclaim? It is, and now I would like to invite Angus Robertson, the Deputy Leader of the SNP, back to the lectern. Welcome, Angus Robertson.
Thank you very much, Convener. Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Conference. Ever since the 23rd of June last year, when Scotland voted by 62% to remain within the European Union, we have had outstanding, principled leadership in Scotland from First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. So please put your hands together and give a rousing welcome to the leader of the Scottish National Party, our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon.
Conference, I'm aware that this is not the only important event happening in Scotland today. And no, I'm not talking about Gordon Brown delivering the same speech again. I am, of course, referring to our magnificent rugby team. Let's congratulate them on an outstanding Six Nations performance. Friends, it's great to be here in the Granite City, to look out at a conference hall packed with so many people from all walks of life and from every corner of our country. You reflect the strength and depth of the SNP. You are a reminder that other parties might appeal to one section of our community or one part of our country, not the SNP. We are a national party with a truly internationalist outlook. Our priority now, and for the generations who come after us, is to build a better Scotland for everyone who lives here, no matter where you come from. Often in these times, I am reminded of our dear friend, the late Bashir Ahmad. Bashir came to Scotland from Pakistan in 1961 to work as a bus driver. 46 years later, he became Scotland's first Asian member of our national parliament. The very first time he addressed an SNP conference, Bashir articulated this simple message. It's not where we come from that's important, he said. It's where we are going together. And today, with the forces of intolerance and xenophobia seemingly on the rise across our world, Bashir's words have never seemed more appropriate. Let us rededicate ourselves today to the spirit of that message: inclusion, tolerance, diversity, let's make these the foundation stones of the better Scotland we are seeking to build. Friends, it is great to see so many of you here today, but I hope you will forgive me, because my speech this afternoon is not really aimed at you. Of course, I could be going out on a limb here, but I'm assuming I already have your support. I'm assuming that you need no persuading that Scotland should not be dragged out of Europe by a Tory government intent on a disastrous, hard Brexit. And I'm guessing that you're already convinced that Scotland has what it takes to join the family of independent nations. Well, that's a relief. Friends, our job is not to talk to each other. It is to reach out to those not persuaded, to put ourselves in their shoes, to understand the hopes, fears, and ambitions of all our fellow citizens, and to do what we can to establish common ground. Always remember Bashir's words. Carry them with you in your heart. What matters is where we are going together. These words don't just apply to how we treat those who come from other countries. They must apply to how we treat each other, all of us who live here and call Scotland home. We all want the best for our country. We just have different views on how to achieve it. As Scotland's government, we bear a special responsibility to offer a hand across these differences, to build consensus where we can. So let us resolve to argue our case with passion and commitment, yes, but at all times with courtesy, understanding, and respect. In that, as in everything else, it is my job to lead you by example. That is why I speak today, not just as SNP leader to our party conference, but as the First Minister to all of Scotland. I know that the plan I set out on Monday was music to the ears of SNP members and independent supporters up and down the country. And let me set out again what that plan is. After the terms of Brexit are clear, but while there is still an opportunity to change course, the people of Scotland will have a choice. There will be an independence referendum. But I also know that for every one of us who is full of excitement and anticipation, there will be someone else feeling nervous and anxious, perhaps even resentful. In the last few years, it has been one big decision after another. You have been bombarded with statistics, claims, and counterclaims. You might have had heated discussion with friends and family. Even though you may feel, like we do, that 2014 was a positive and vibrant exercise of democracy, you might not relish going through it all over again. I understand that. So I want you to know that I did not reach the decision lightly. Indeed, for months I have strived to find compromise and agreement with the Prime Minister. Despite our overwhelming vote for Remain, the Scottish Government accepted that Scotland within the UK would leave the EU, but that we should seek to retain our place in the single market. We proposed substantial new powers for the Scottish Parliament, short of independence, that would help protect Scotland's interests in a post-Brexit UK. But instead of meeting us halfway, or frankly, any of the way, Westminster chose to dig its heels in. Our efforts at compromise with the Prime Minister met with a brick wall of intransigence. And you know, that is a concern that should resonate far beyond Scotland. The Prime Minister's attitude should worry all of us, hoping that negotiations with Europe will not be a disaster. Because, and let me put this bluntly, if she shows the same condescension and inflexibility, the same tin ear to other EU countries as she has to Scotland, then the Brexit process will hit the rocks. Of course, that's the outcome that hardline Brexiteers are agitating for. But it would be in no one's interests. So as Article 50 is about to be triggered, let me say this to the Prime Minister. Stop putting the interests of the right wing of your party ahead of the interests of the people of our country. For me, though, the Prime Minister's refusal to budge an inch meant that I had to make a decision. I could have taken the easy option. I could let Scotland drift through the next 2 years, hoping for the best, but knowing that the worst is far more likely. Waiting for the chance to say, I told you so, knowing that by then it might be too late to avoid the damage of a hard Brexit. Or I could make a plan now to put the Scottish people in charge of our own future. I choose to put the people in charge. The fact is, our country stands at a crossroads. The future of the UK looks very different today than it did 2 years ago. We know change is coming. The only question is what kind of change. And on that, we are not powerless. We can still decide which path we take. Whatever our different opinions on independence, we can all unite around this simple principle. Scotland's future must be Scotland's choice. Which brings me to the Prime Minister's statement on Thursday. To stand in the way of a referendum would deny us that choice. It would mean that the path of our country was determined not by us, but for us. Decided by an increasingly right-wing, Brexit-obsessed Tory government. A government that some predict will be in power now until 2030 and beyond. Thanks, in no small part, to the embarrassing shambles of an opposition that Labour has become. Tory government dominated by the likes of Boris Johnson and Liam Fox, deluding themselves about rebuilding the empire and refloating the royal yacht Britannia. It seems they want to go back in time. But it's not just nostalgia for empire that they're keen on. They clearly long for the days before we had a Scottish Parliament. The days when Tory governments could do anything they wanted to Scotland, no matter how often they were rejected by the voters. The days when they could impose the poll tax, destroy Scottish industry, and deny all demands for constitutional change. Well, the Prime Minister should understand this point and understand it well. Those days are gone and they are not coming back. Next week, in line with the mandate secured at last May's election, we will ask the Scottish Parliament to agree that the Scottish people should have the right to choose our own future. We will ask Parliament to agree that this choice should be exercised at a time when we know the terms of Brexit, but before it is too late to take a different path. And we will ask Parliament's permission to seek the legal authority that will allow the people of Scotland to have that choice. If a majority in the Scottish Parliament endorses that position, the Prime Minister should be clear about this. At that point, a fair, legal and agreed referendum on a timescale that will allow Scotland an informed choice ceases to be just my proposal or that of the SNP. It becomes the will of the democratically elected Parliament of Scotland. To stand in defiance of that would be for the Prime Minister to shatter beyond repair any notion of the UK as a respectful partnership of equals. She has time to think again, and I hope she does. If her concern is timing, then within reason I am happy to have that discussion. But let the Prime Minister be in no doubt. The will of our Parliament must and will prevail. Of course, the Tories' reluctance to allow Scotland a choice isn't really hard to fathom. They are now terrified of the verdict of the Scottish people. They know, as well as we do, that what is at stake in the years ahead is not just our place in Europe, important though that is. What is at stake is the kind of country we are going to be. With independence, the country we become is up to us, all of us who live here. We can choose to be a compassionate country with a big heart and a helping hand for those in need. An open country that doesn't pull up the drawbridge and look inwards, but one that encourages the best and brightest from around Europe to make Scotland their home. And not just from the goodness of our hearts, but for reasons of hard-headed self-interest as well. Scotland needs people to want to work here, in our businesses, our universities, and our public services. Of course, people have concerns about immigration that need to be addressed. I know that from my own constituency. But as we decide the kind of country we want to be, we must be clear about the choice on offer. For the current UK government, ending free movement comes before everything else, including the health of our economy. It is their #1 priority. And make no mistake, for Scotland, the result will be lower living standards and a hit to our prosperity. So not just for the sake of our values, but for our economic future as well, it's time to take a different course. It's time to stand against the demonisation of migrants and to stand up for those who choose to join us in building a better Scotland. Of course, we don't yet know exactly what the Tories want a post-Brexit UK to be like. But there are two recent developments that point the way. Last year, under pressure, David Cameron accepted what was called the Dubs Amendment. It committed the UK to providing a safe haven for unaccompanied child refugees, some of the most helpless and vulnerable people on our planet. But last month, the UK government called a halt to the Dubs scheme. They said that their new approach to refugees was absolutely right. Well, I beg to differ. I think it is absolutely wrong. It is inhumane and it must be reversed. The second issue is the status of EU nationals. Men and women who have built lives, families and careers here. People who, overnight in June last year, lost all certainty about their futures. You know, it's a depressing commentary on the state of British democracy that it took the House of Lords to do the right thing. But fair play to them, they did. They secured an amendment to the Brexit bill guaranteeing the right of EU citizens to stay in the UK. It is even more depressing that the Westminster government then whipped its MPs in the House of Commons to overturn that guarantee. It is indefensible. You cannot lecture others about politics not being a game while you are using the lives of human beings as pawns. Let me make this clear to everyone across our country today. In an independent Scotland, the SNP would guarantee unequivocally the right to stay here for all EU citizens who do us the honour of making our country their home. Compassionate, open-hearted and hard-headed, that's the kind of country I want Scotland to be. We must be resourceful and enterprising as well. No one owes Scotland a living, but we are more than capable of earning our own success. In the debate about our future, you, the people of Scotland, deserve to hear us speak frankly about the challenges facing the Scottish economy, the challenges of independence and the challenges we will face under an austerity-obsessed Tory government pursuing a hard Brexit. We should embrace that scrutiny. Opponents of independence, as is their right, will make their case by highlighting what they see as the difficulties. It will be up to us to demonstrate how these difficulties can be overcome. But as we do so, Let's never, ever forget this. We have the strongest foundations on which to build. Advantages that few nations can match. Unrivaled energy resources, some of the world's best universities, strength in finance and business services, cutting-edge expertise in life sciences and advanced manufacturing, a truly world-class food and drink industry, and the best tourist attractions anywhere in the world. Well, almost the best. According to Rough Guide, we are actually the second best country in the world to visit this year, but we are aiming for the top spot. The point I'm making is this. As we debate our future, let's do so openly and honestly. But let no one, for or against independence, ever seek to run down Scotland's strengths and our nation's great potential. What we must all do is strive to make our country even better. So when we look at a fiscal deficit created on Westminster's watch, let's decide that allowing Westminster to keep making the same mistakes over and over again is not the best. Let us be a country that works out how to build, grow and innovate our way to a stronger and more sustainable future in a way that keeps faith with our own values of social justice. A country that makes its own choices, like choosing to invest in public services and a brighter future for our young people, not in a new generation of nuclear weapons. Our Growth Commission is currently working on a clear plan for Scotland's economic future. The Commission will conclude its work over the next few months, and we will then present its outcome for public scrutiny and debate. It will address the challenges we face in a hard-headed and realistic way, but it will also set out the massive opportunities we have as a country if we choose to grasp them. You know, since the Brexit vote, I've had loads of messages from people in other parts of the UK asking if they can move to Scotland. Now, I'm sure many of them are joking, but if any of you are listening today, there is a serious point. The UK is about to turn its back on membership of the world's biggest single market. Imagine what will happen if Scotland chooses to stay. We will become a magnet for talent and investment from all across the UK. So let me issue this open invitation today. Scotland isn't full up. If you are as appalled as we are at the path this Westminster government is taking, come and join us. Come here to live, work, invest, or study. Come to Scotland and be part of building a modern, progressive, outward-looking, compassionate country. It is down to us to make the economic case for independence, to answer clearly the questions that people ask, and we will. But we should also be clear about this. Those who argue for Scotland to stay in the UK have big economic questions to answer too. We know that down that path lies austerity, cuts, and the impact of leaving the single market. The Westminster government is now even openly threatening a race to the bottom in tax, wages and working conditions. That is no basis for a modern economy. The kind of economy we are seeking to build is founded on a different vision, not a race to the bottom, but investment to lift people up. That is our plan, not just with independence, but in the here and now. Since we took office, Scotland's productivity, so crucial to our economic prospects, has grown by almost 10%. Productivity in the rest of the UK has grown by just 0.1%. So we have a good record, but we have more to do. Key to our success will be digital skills. You know, it's estimated that if we make better use of cloud technology and big data, the benefits to our economy could be over £5 billion a year. Recent studies estimate that we need more than 12,000 new workers with digital skills every year. And yet only a quarter of businesses report that they are doing anything at all to develop the technology skills of their current workforces. We need to change that. Scotland can't afford to lose out on the digital revolution. So I can announce today that we will establish a new 3-year, £36 million support fund to meet the upfront costs of digital skills training, helping businesses to invest in their staff and build our country's future. A strong economy is the basis for strong public services. In a few weeks' time, people across the country will make their judgment on who should run local services. The Tories have based their entire campaign for these council elections on denying the people of Scotland the right to choose our own future. Our campaign is all about improving Scotland's communities. And here we have a very clear choice too. Last month, our budget invested hundreds of millions of pounds of extra resources in local services. The Tories voted against that budget because it didn't deliver a tax cut for the highest earners. Same old Tories. Tax cuts for the richest and just cuts for the rest. So my message today is clear. Don't let the Tories get their hands on your local services. On May the 4th, vote SNP. We work to build a better Scotland every single day. In May, as well as contesting these council elections, we will mark 10 years of our SNP government. I am proud of the work we have done, but I know we have much, much more to do. Today, I want to thank everyone up and down the country who works in our public services. I want to thank particularly those who work in our National Health Service. And today, there are more people working in our health service than ever before. You know, the additional staff employed since we took office would fill this auditorium 6 times over. And that is necessary. With populations getting older, pressures on health services across the world are intense. Nowhere, perhaps, do we see that more clearly than in our accident and emergency services. But there we also see the commitment of our NHS professionals. In Scotland, 90.8% of patients are seen within the 4-hour target. That's still not as good as we want it to be, but it is better by a significant distance than any other part of the UK. In England, the figure is just 77.6%, more than 13 points behind Scotland. Perhaps someone should have informed the Prime Minister of that fact before she had the brass neck to lecture us about governance. But we have more to do. One of the challenges that our NHS faces is the increasing number of people seeking support from mental health services. Actually, that is a welcome development. It shows that the stigma that stopped people asking for help in years gone by is now fading. But it places an obligation on us to invest more in services to meet that need. Over the next few weeks, we will publish our new 10-year mental health strategy. That strategy will focus not just on traditional mental health services. It will look at what we need to do across the NHS and in wider society too. For example, we know that GP surgeries and A&E services are often the front line for mental health. And outside the NHS, we know that too many who end up in our prisons and our police cells have mental health issues that go untreated. We want to change that. So let me outline today just some of the action we will take. We will increase the mental health workforce, giving access to dedicated mental health professionals to all of our A&E departments 24 hours a day, to all of our GP practices, to every custody suite in every police station and to our prisons. In total, we will increase the budget by £35 million over the next 5 years to support the employment of 800 additional mental health workers in our hospitals, GP surgeries, prisons and police stations. Providing healthcare to those who need it is one of our most important responsibilities. But I have made clear that the defining mission of our government is education. I believe Scotland as a country has the right to choose our own future. But we must also make sure that the people who live here have the means and opportunity to make choices about their own lives. That means building a country where every child can make the most of their talents. We are determined to close the attainment gap in our schools. But we know that life chances are far too often determined before a child even starts school. Doubling the provision of high-quality, state-funded childcare, as we intend to do in this Parliament, is therefore a key part of our plans. Rightly, when we talk about the childcare revolution, we focus on the benefits for children and parents. But there is another benefit. Delivering our pledge will involve the recruitment of thousands more people to work in our nurseries. We need to demonstrate how much we value this work. I'm very proud of the steps our government has already taken to extend payment of the living wage. We have led by example in the public sector, and we have encouraged businesses to see the benefits not just for their staff, but also for their bottom line. I can confirm today that we intend to apply that approach to our expansion of childcare. In public sector nurseries, staff already receive the living wage, but there are currently around 1,000 private nurseries helping to deliver our free childcare policy, and currently around 80% of the childcare staff who work in them don't earn the living wage. That's 8,000 people in total. There are few more important jobs than caring for our youngest children. So I can announce today that by the end of this Parliament, we will invest £50 million to ensure that all staff working in private nurseries delivering our childcare pledge are paid the real living wage. Friends, we can do all these things to improve the lives of the people of Scotland because we are in government. And it is a privilege to serve. That privilege to serve is something we should never take for granted. We must earn and re-earn the trust of the people each and every day. The opportunity to serve our country in government was something that past generations of SNP members could only dream about. But it is down to their efforts that I stand here before you as First Minister. When the story of our party and of Scotland's independence is written, it will be those who worked so hard against seemingly impossible odds who will take centre stage. And there is little doubt that one person and one date will stand out. Winnie Ewing, 1967. Exactly 50 years ago this year, Winnie won the Hamilton by-election and made this famous declaration: "Stop the world, Scotland wants to get on." Let those words resonate today. We are a European internationalist party leading a European internationalist country. We will make sure that our voice is heard here at home, and we will stand up for Scotland's values abroad. And one of those values is self-determination, an unshakable belief in the sovereign right of the people of Scotland to determine our own future. Last week, I had the very sad honour of speaking at a memorial service for one of the greatest advocates of that principle, the late Canon Kenyon Wright. When he chaired the Constitutional Convention, Kenyon posed this question of the then Tory government's opposition to devolution. What happens, he asked, if the other voice we know so well responds by saying, "We say no, and we are the state"? His answer to that question, so relevant again today, was this: well, we say yes, and we are the people. Friends, as we go forward, we must work to win the support of the people and the communities that we serve. We must always work to build a better Scotland for everyone who lives here. We must stand up for our country and always trust the people. As we approach this crossroads in our national life, let us resolve to give Scotland a choice. Let this message ring out today. Scotland's future will be in Scotland's hands. Thank you very much.
conference. I know you want to stay in the hall. I know, but conference, I was only trying to say, safe journey home, and let's win the council elections on the 4th of May. Let's get out there and do it. Thanks very much.